I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Canon. We've been Disney fans our entire lives. And now, as childless adults, we're undertaking a journey through the media that shaped our lives.
Trying to find out if what made them special is still there.
We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
And before we get into all of the stuff we're going to do, because we have got a lot to talk about, we want to talk about our good friends over at the Funny Music Project, thefump.com. Every year, they celebrate the funny side of music, what they call the Logan Awards, the Logan Whitehurst Memorial Award for Excellence in Comedy Music, named after a great artist, great singer, the late, great Logan Whitehurst. If you have never heard of Logan Whitehurst, please look him up. Listen to those songs he wrote. They are amazing. It was supposed to happen at their annual convention called FumpFest, which was supposed to take place in August in Chicago. The governor of Illinois pretty much is putting a kibosh on any large-scale gatherings, pretty much until either a vaccine for COVID exists or there are significantly no new cases reported, which by the time August happens is not gonna. So they're transferring everything to online, but the Logan Awards are still happening. So you, the listener, can nominate any funny song if it had come out in 2019, January to December 2019. And you can go to LoganAwards.com to submit your nominations. And that is any song that came out in 2019. If it made you laugh, and it came out in 2019, it is good to go. They do 3 categories: Best Original Comedy Song, Best Parody Comedy Song, and Best Comedy Music Video. Kiki, do you want to put more details on this one?
Yeah, I have the honor of being one of the jurors for this year, and what we need for you to do is to go to LoganAwards.com, that's LOGAN, awards.com, and give us your nominations for funny songs that you heard in 2019. It doesn't matter if it's a big star like Weird Al or your college buddy who only has 5 people who listens to his SoundCloud. We want to hear the best in funny music, no matter where it comes from. So if you heard a song that made you laugh or watched a music video that made you laugh in 2019, please go to LoganAwards.com and enter your nominations. Anyone can put in a nomination. You have 5 nominations per person. The nominations close on June 26th. Also, we will be plugging this from now until August. There will be, in lieu of the in-person FumpFest like was planned, they're going to be doing a completely free one-day FumpFest, a big celebration of comedy music with comedy music guests, so lots of funny tunes, and of course the presentation of the Logan Awards. So keep listening and go to fumpfest.com, that's FUMPFEST.com, for more information about that between now and August the 29th.
Yes. Also, there are other events happening about this, including what they call dumb parody ideas.
And I may have come up with a dumb parody idea. I don't know. I might enter this year. We'll see.
Yes. Basically, if you have an idea of a parody song that's kind of dumb, kind of stupid, but it made your buddy laugh, it's viable. But you can submit it through a video submission. More information is at FumpFest.com. And I think that's all we can talk about about all the Logan Awards and FumpFest for right now, as there has not been anything else announced yet, since we're kind of a bit away from this event.
Yeah. But we'll keep you updated between now and then on the podcast, because they're good friends of ours and we absolutely love them. And, you know, half of our guests have been comedy music people, so yeah. we're very much in that scene.
Speaking of good friends of ours, today's show, we are talking that a good friend of ours is actually involved with. That is the new Hulu series, Solar Opposites. And this is TVMA. This is a mature audience show. So, listener discretion, because we are going to be talking about adult themes, adult situation, that we try to keep this show as PG-13 as possible. But for the purpose of this show, we're not going to get overly graphic, but more innuendo than we usually do on this show.
Yeah, this is a show that we do encourage you to watch. Please go watch it. We will try to keep this episode free of any major plot spoilers, although we will be talking about kind of the general themes of the show. But if you want to go watch it first, we absolutely encourage you to do that. You can binge it in just a few hours.
It's only 8 episodes.
Yeah, only 8 episodes, about 24 minutes an episode, so you can get through that in, 3 hours or so with potty breaks. But if you want to go watch it and then come back to us, that's fine. If you want to kind of hear our opinions on it, in general, please be aware there might be minor spoilers. If you're very sensitive to that, then don't. We're going to try not to give away any big plot points, any big twists. But yeah, this is not for kids. This is a very not for kids. One of the creators is also the creator of Rick and Morty. And it goes a little further than even Rick and Morty is allowed to go. So
this goes even further than South Park is even willing to go.
Yeah, I mean, the Hulu format does kind of free them up. They're not really constricted to the typical
FCC guidelines.
Well, in fairness, neither is cable television.
True.
But most cable stations do kind of follow those guidelines, to a greater or lesser extent. But this is, they get into some stuff that kind of surprised me. It is, you can tell it was developed under Fox before the merger.
Yeah. And a little note before we really get into it. If you hear any noise in the background, it's about 90 degrees where I'm at. It is hot, so that's my air conditioner. Apologies for anyone who doesn't want to hear noise. Again, very much apologies. It's hot here.
Well, it's probably about that same temperature here, but, we actually know how to handle that. You're
from the South. This is normal for you.
Yeah. This is what we call comfortable weather.
But anyway, let's get into Solar Opposites, as you said, created by one of the creators of Rick and Morty. Why don't you go into that?
Yeah, okay. So
you know more about Rick and Morty than I do.
Yeah, I am a huge fan of Rick and Morty, actually. It is one of my favorite shows. My second favorite thing currently running on Adult Swim. Nothing will ever replace Venture Brothers. But yeah, so Justin Roiland, for those of you who don't really watch Adult Swim but are into cartoons and maybe have small children, you probably know him best as the Earl of Lemongrab on Adventure Time. So, yeah, that little talking lemon on Adventure Time, that is Justin Roiland. He is a voice actor, he's an animator, and he has now gone into show creation. Rick and Morty is done with a friend of some friends of ours, actually, Dan Harmon, who is also known for creating Community and a few other things. But Dan Harmon, not involved in this show. The co-creator of this show is a guy named Mike McMahon, who is a writer, a producer. He worked on Rick and Morty as a writer and producer. And it seems that is how he met Justin Roiland, and they apparently hit it off and decided they wanted to do. Mike McMahon actually won an Emmy because he was one of the supervising producers on the episode Pickle Rick. So if you are a Rick and Morty fan, and probably even if you're not, you know the infamous Pickle Rick episode. He also worked on Drawn Together and South Park at some point, so you kind of see where these two people are getting their ideas from. Mm-hmm. Okay, they're very steeped in that kind of thing. Interesting thing also about Mike McMahon, he is apparently going to be the creator of a new Star Trek series for CBS All Access, the Star Trek Lower Decks.
I believe that will be also an animated series.
Well, it really makes me slightly, yes, it does appear that is true, makes me slightly less interested in that series for some reason. Animated Trek does not have a great reputation. But, if anybody can do it, it's probably this guy. Yeah. His previous work has really impressed me. So I'm willing to give it a chance.
Yes,
yeah.
And also, we do have to. We kind of mentioned it earlier, but this is our good friend Lindsay Carosa. She is working on this show. She started out as a character designer on the show, and right before we recorded last episode, we found out that she had been promoted to head character designer for season 2.
Yay!
Getting that Disney money.
Yeah. No, we're extremely proud of her, and I've seen some of the behind the scenes of her work, as I believe you have as well.
Yeah, she posted some of her work some of the stuff that she worked on her personal pages.
So I've seen some of that, and it's very impressive.
She's actually in one of the episodes. We found out she actually drew herself in one of the episodes.
Yeah, the entire kind of animation staff or whatever is in there in one episode, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, so you'll remember Lindsay was with us for Brave Little Toaster, and this was her guest request for us to take a look at this. So we're going to take a look at the entire first season. Like we said, it's only 8 24-minute episodes, so very short, very easy to binge. And I will say with great pleasure that this was the number one thing on Hulu when it came out.
Yep.
So a lot of people binged this, and it says, according to Hulu stats, that most people binged the entire series in the course of a weekend. So that should tell you it's a really quick watch, and I think that this one is actually better as a binge watch. I'm not sure you will enjoy it as much if you are forced to watch an episode here, watch an episode there,
There is not a lot of continuity between episodes, but there's enough that binge watching it, you get the full appreciation, especially when you get to episode 7. And that's all I will say there.
Well, okay, I will talk about the continuity here, because I've been reading reviews of the show and looking into kind of the background, and I will say that a lot of people say, like, that the series is kind of split up into halves, the first season, and that the first half of the season is kind of standalone episodes that don't really connect. They're just kind of sitcom shenanigans.
I would say they're more character studies, if anything else.
Second half of the season suddenly becomes a coherent storyline, and I think that is incorrect. I think that the main continuity of the season is not even the B plot, but like the D plot for the first 4 episodes. And then it slowly kind of takes over in that back half. So it really rewards people who look at details in the background.
Yes, definitely. If you're one of those people who are always picking out every episode and looking at screenshots and zooming in, it's like, what does that mean? What does that mean? You will be rewarded.
Yeah, this is definitely the show for you if you're that kind of like very attentive fan. And honestly, I will say Rick and Morty is very similar in that respect. For those of you who may be Rick and Morty fans, but especially for those of you who absolutely loathe Rick and Morty, I gotta say some things. There are some stylistic similarities. There are some comparisons that you can draw. However, this series is not Rick and Morty. I think if you like Rick and Morty, you will be predisposed to like this show. There is enough about it that has that flavor of Justin Roiland's style that you will feel comfortable there. But I think even if you don't like Rick and Morty or you have no conception of it at all, it's not part of your world, I still think that you can find stuff that you will like in this. This is not a series created just for Rick and Morty fans to have another Rick and Morty. This is very definitely its own thing, and I very much respect that.
Yeah, this is not a Rick and Morty spinoff. I am not a Rick and Morty watcher. I have attempted several times to watch the series. Not my bag. I don't hate people who do watch it, but it's not.
Obviously.
I know. One of my closest friends is the Rick and. But me personally, I could not get into the show. Whether that makes me a bad cartoon viewer or not, whatever.
I don't think so. I think Rick and Morty is a very specific show for a very specific type of viewer. And before you start on me, no, I'm not talking about that infamous poster like, you have to be super smart to understand Rick and Morty. Like, no. That's not it. But I think the way they structure the humor and the way they structure the episodes, comedy is very subjective. And I think that there are a certain number of people that will find that funny. And I think there are a certain number of people that's not the way they want their humor delivered.
Agreed.
It's a very specific style.
Like, I can watch a Rick and Morty clip and be entertained and laugh, but watching the episode as a whole is like, oh, it was just that one clip.
Yeah, and the thing is that they try a lot of things on Rick and Morty. It's a very experimental show. It's an extremely experimental show. And so sometimes you'll watch it and it'll be a very coherent narrative, and then sometimes you'll watch it and it will be like a TV loaf. It's like bits of TV that were chopped and then formed together and then microwaved to make a sort of meatloaf of a TV episode. And some people love meatloaf and some people do not. So,
Yeah. I generally I saw the first episode a few days after it came out, and it was like, oh, it's okay. But then I actually binge watched a few days ago episodes 2 through 8 in one day. And I was like, I think I understand this now. This actually is
we're back on Solar Opposites now. I think we just skipped from the Rick and Morty dissection back to Solar Opposites.
I'm going back into
Solar Opposites.
Yeah, back to Solar Opposites. Let's get back to Solar Opposites.
Yeah,
this is not a Rick and Morty podcast.
No, it is not. Nor would I want it to be. There are other people who do that, and they're fine. And I.
If you like Rick and Morty, I have nothing against you. Just not my bag.
Go listen to the Wisecrack podcast. It's brilliant. Anyway,
back to Solar Opposites. I said I saw the first episode of Solar Opposites right after it was released, which was May 8th, and it was okay, it was all right, and then got to binge episodes 2 through 8 a couple of days ago over the weekend, and I think I agree with you that this is a better as a binge watch show because there's a lot of recurring gags and stuff that you can appreciate more through a full binge watch of this show rather than just individual episodes.
Yeah, when it comes at you all at once, I think it's a little more coherent in your brain. To me, watching this as a traditional once-a-week series, I think would harm it in the same way as I think watching 10 or 20 minutes of a single feature film would make you not appreciate it as much.
Yeah, if you cut up like Avengers Endgame and showed 20 minutes a week, you're not gonna get the same feeling.
Yeah, it's not gonna feel as good as sitting there and watching all 17 hours of it in one go in a theater. That was a really long movie. Maybe put an intermission in there is all I'm saying.
All right, so
but yeah, so I think that this is actually, I won't call it the first, of course, but I think this is one of the few series that really takes advantage of the streaming platform, of knowing, I assume they knew, because it seems a very strange creative choice if they didn't know that it would be dumped all at once. But I'm glad that Hulu decided to dump this all at once, because sometimes on Hulu, I've been watching another series on there and they would release one episode a week. That is usually what they do with their big, tentpole kind of shows on there. But they chose to release the entire series at once, which I'm so glad they did, because I'm not sure that people would have liked this as much if it was one episode here, one episode there.
Yeah, take another Disney series. I don't think people would have enjoyed The Mandalorian if you got all 8 episodes at once.
No, I don't think Mandalorian is a show that you should have binged 8 hours straight.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but yeah.
Yeah, and if you did, maybe that's the way you liked it, but I think my brain was happier in some ways kind of digesting what happened for a bit. Solar Opposites is very much a show that I think you want it injected into your eyeballs immediately.
Yeah.
In the best way possible. So yeah, let's talk about the premise of the show now that we've talked about the format.
Yeah. So we have the alien planet Schlorp. Planet Schlorp. It gets destroyed by a meteorite. Alien planet being destroyed and refugees. We've seen that premise before many times over, but this is a nice spin on it. We have 2 aliens and their replicants are sent to another planet to terraform it to become the new homeworld of the Schlorpians. And this particular group lands on Earth. And some like it there, some don't. But they're stuck on Earth until either they can fix their ship and get out of there, or their pupa, their little assigned creature, matures enough to terraform the planet and become the new homeworld.
Yeah, let's get into this a little more specifically, because the show uses some very specific and kind of vague terminology. So we have Corvo and Terry are kind of there's 4 main characters. It's a family unit of sorts, and Corvo and Terry are the
parents?
The adults.
Adults,
well,
yeah.
They're very specifically said to be adults of this species, which very obviously you pick up throughout the series has a completely different life cycle to humans. They are in fact plant-based as opposed to some kind of mammalian or reptilian kind of creature. Even though they look very humanoid, apparently the end of their life cycle is to turn into a tree. So they are plant-based in some way, and you see bits of that throughout the series in various forms. Corvo and Terry are adults. They were assigned this ship as a way to save the species. Apparently there were 50 ships, 100 adults sent out. along with their replicants. Is that what they call them?
Replicants, yes.
Yeah, which are children, basically,
they're
in some form.
I guess you can say long-form cloning.
We're not really sure, I don't think. Like I said, the show is very vague in some respects. These are obviously immature versions of the species, children of the species. But how exactly they're formed and if they are in any way related genetically to Corvo and Terry is never specified.
They are very similar looking to the adults. We have Yum-Yulak, who looks very much like Corvo, and Jesse, who looks very much like Terry.
Yeah, and so you can kind of imagine that Yum-Yulak is maybe some sort of clone of Corvo, and Jesse is a clone of Terry. I think that's what we're supposed to get from it.
Yeah.
But it's
and they do have some, but not all, personality traits of their adult counterparts in some capacity.
Yeah, they do. Their personalities in many ways are very similar. Both Corvo
but they have their own identities.
Yeah, both Corvo and Yum-Yulak are not super happy on Earth, and they're kind of gruff and a little bit smarter, perhaps scientifically speaking. Terry and Jesse are more at home on Earth in many ways, kind of enjoying being around humans a little bit more, less interested in science, more interested in
pop culture, the culture of the world, pretty much.
Yeah, the culture of Earth, but also more emotionally intelligent.
Yes.
In that kind of sense. So
the big change is Jesse is also female, while Terry is male.
Yeah, and they do say at one point in the series that the replicants had the ability to choose a gender, so it does not seem that that is kind of an assigned thing by their planet, maybe? I don't know. Again, a lot of this is very vague, and you kind of just get context clues from it. So I like that they don't explicitly state everything about this planet and the culture, and you kind of find little bits about it throughout the season. I personally find that more engaging as a viewer.
And those could be future episodes in future seasons.
Yeah, and I hope they are. I like finding out bits of things and go like, oh, I really had that wrong. That's very interesting. Interestingly enough, you kind of said Corvo and Terry were like the parents, maybe. The thing is that they have a kind of familial sense to them when you watch the show, but it comes across to me, at least it came across to me, I don't know if you felt this as well, as sort of an older brother, younger brother kind of thing.
Kind of. Corvo does come out as the older brother, and Terry does come off as the younger brother. They do argue a lot. They have this dynamic of at points they can't even stand each other. But Jesse does refer to Yum-Yulak as her brother.
Yeah, Jesse does refer to Yum-Yulak as a brother. The relationship between Corvo and Terry is, for most of the series, left kind of ambiguous. The interesting thing is that you get this kind of like either brothers or maybe friends who are close kind of feeling from Corvo and Terry, and then about 3 episodes in, they're sharing a bed together, and you're like, wait, are they meant to be like a couple?
I think it's more of that's what they assume all adult units do on Earth, and all the knowledge of Earth culture comes from television, and I guess all of it, they know that the leaders of the household both sleep in the same bed, therefore they have to as well.
Yeah, and as it progresses, you also sort of get the idea that maybe they're not romantic, and later in the series they kind of talk about their previous life back on their home planet. and they talk about one of them having a life mate, and so again, it's a little ambiguous. There is some sexual talk between them.
Yes, and it's also stated at some point that on their home planet there are no genders, and they both and all four of them chose genders when they got to Earth.
Yeah, so there are many ways to read this, and I kind of like that. Like, if you want to read it as this is a same-sex couple raising children on Earth, the show actually does kind of hold that up so far. You can absolutely read that, and honestly, I can't tell you you're wrong. If you want to read it as they're two bros, and they don't understand that, like, bros don't sleep in the same bed, I also can't tell you you're wrong on that either.
Yeah, there's
necessarily, you know,
it's left ambiguous enough that it's whatever it is you think it as until the show says otherwise.
Yeah, and I like that so much of it is left up to interpretation so far.
Again, it's only 8 episodes, and we know there is a second season coming. We don't know what's going to happen then because it hasn't been made yet.
Yeah, I believe they are in production now. Maybe I'm not sure.
Get that money, Lindsay.
Yeah. Side note, I predict that the unfortunate happenstance going on in the world right now is going to lead to a very interesting animation renaissance, just kind of in general.
We've already seen it through Disney with their Olaf shorts.
Yeah, but animation in general is one of the few kind of traditional TV movie mediums that can be done from home. I won't say easily, but more easily than anything else right now.
Especially now, everything can be done on computers. Whether it's 2D or 3D animation.
But honestly, even if you're doing 2D traditional sketches, I mean, most of that is an animator working at a board by themselves and then passing on their artwork to somebody else to do the next stage of the process. Mm-hmm. It might just take it a little longer to get those sheets from one place to the other, but, you know, even traditional animation, I think, could still probably be done in an at-home way with some modifications. But computer-based anime, I mean, you know, if you're using a Wacom tablet and you're emailing things back and forth, it seems to be one of the few industries that paused more than stopped.
Yes, exactly.
In fact, one of my favorite live-action shows, The Blacklist, had to finish their final episode of this season half done with animation because they got shut down in production of the last episode and had only filmed half the episode. And that turned out to be an incredibly interesting experiment because the actors just recorded their lines from their home. Professional audio equipment has become very simple and easy to use from home.
I know, because we're using them.
And honestly, you know, just moving some of the technology from an office building to a house in order to do the actual artwork is not as complicated as it would be to try to do most other forms of entertainment. The other one I would suggest is puppetry.
Yeah.
Thanks to green screen technology being so quick and easy to do from home now, a lot of puppet-based series are now being filmed from home. Sesame Street has started doing that.
The new Fraggle Rock was completely filmed in people's homes.
Yeah, the new Fraggle Rock series was entirely filmed during quarantine in the homes of the puppeteers using iPhones and green screens. The entire thing was filmed on iPhones. And also the new Muppet series that has been announced for Disney Plus will be filmed in much the same way.
Yeah.
at home with the puppeteers. Sesame Street is doing it now. A couple of other things are starting up as well. So I predict kind of that animation and puppetry is going to take over the entertainment landscape for a little bit until we can get people back in front of cameras and on sets together and stuff. It seems strangely made to continue in this strange world we have found ourselves in.
Most live action shows have moved all of their productions from fall to January at this point.
Yeah, that's going to be very difficult to do.
There'll be no new fall season.
A lot of...
That's for the first time in who knows how long, there will be no new shows in the fall.
Except for possibly animation
Supernatural.
and puppetry. Yeah, Supernatural and anime. Somehow Supernatural just keeps plugging along no matter what they do. Anyway, back to the show at hand.
Back to the show that we're actually talking about this week. Let's get into the actors.
Well, we haven't talked about the fifth member of our family unit much.
Let's talk. Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about the pupa. What is a pupa?
This is kind of the baby Yoda of this show.
Yeah,
it doesn't really talk. It just kind of sits there and looks cute and does adorable things in the background for most of the season.
And depending on the context of the episode, it's either the pet or the baby.
Yeah, it's sort of a pet or a baby, but also it's sort of like a nuclear weapon.
For each pairing, we're given a pupa, and the pupa, as explained through the show, will evolve at a certain point in its life cycle, and the entire point of a pupa is to terraform a planet so that the Slorpian people can live on it. And it can be the new homeworld, and any other life that is already living on that planet will be destroyed.
Yeah. Another thing that they say at the beginning of every episode is that these groups were sent out to find uninhabited planets. This was not necessarily a race that was out to destroy other planets.
No.
They meant to go find uninhabited planets, or at least uninhabited of sentient life, let's say. Yeah. And then whatever, plant matter or nutrients or whatever was there, the pupa would evolve, eat it, and then somehow turn it into whatever was needed to make it match their original planet, terraform it. Mm-hmm. An interesting idea, a living terraforming device. The pupa does seem at points to have a sentience of its own, although it's kind of unclear if it is even the same species.
We don't know. Again, this is stuff that they could talk about in future episodes and future seasons.
Yeah, this could very well be the initial stage of life for this species, and then it evolves into something like Yumulak and Jessie, and eventually Corvo and Terry, and eventually a tree. But we're never quite certain.
Again, they give us just enough.
Of the pupa.
They give us just enough information to keep us guessing.
Yeah, which I like. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the. Let's just go through the main four, because
there are a lot of background characters.
Yeah, there are a lot of background characters, and we'll name drop the actors of a few of them, but I don't really want to get into their, because our episodes are lengthy enough as they are. Yeah. But we start off.
Justin Roiland himself as Corvo.
Justin Roiland as Corvo. Justin Roiland, if you don't know, voices both Rick and Morty on Rick and Morty. He is quite interesting as a voice actor.
Corvo definitely does have a little bit of Rick's sounding very similar to Rick, but the inflections are just different enough to make him a different character.
Yeah, I think Justin learned that you don't want to do that burp thing a lot. Apparently he was sort of half drunk for most of the early production of Rick and Morty as far as the recording booth.
I can believe it.
Because he kept having to burp as Rick. That's one of Rick's main kind of vocal tics, is that he burps a lot. And the only way he could figure out how to kind of do that on cue was just to fill himself with a lot of beer and then burp it back out.
He could have drank soda. Had the same effect.
Yeah, that was my first thought too when I heard him tell this story, but maybe he's not a soda person. I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to get drunk at Rourke. Who knows?
Hey, he's getting paid for it.
But fun fact, eventually he realized that was probably killing both brain cells and liver, and he didn't want to do it anymore. And so they got the smart idea to call in Maurice LaMarche, who is strangely known in the voice acting community for being able to produce a sound that sounds exactly like a burp on cue for as long as needed in all kinds of different registers and styles. And he's like the only one that can actually do it.
He's pretty much as Barney Gumbel's burp in The Simpsons.
Yeah, but he's also, if you remember, on Animaniacs, there's a bit where Wacko burps the entire national anthem.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah,
that is not Jess Harnell. That is actually Maurice LaMarche. And
Maurice
so
LaMarche, another legendary voice actor that was your childhood.
Yeah. So he's the voice of the brain in Pinky and the Brain. But yeah, so now on Rick and Morty, they get him to come in and do all those burps. So I like that on Solar Opposites, Justin Roiland has finally figured out, like, yeah, I'm doing a very similar gruff adult man voice for Corvo in a very similar style to Rick, but I'm not going to be ridiculous and evil on myself and put in such a markedly horrible vocal tic like Rick's constant burping, or with Morty he does that kind of like okay, and Corvo doesn't have either of those. He's kind of a very self-assured, normal speaking kind of guy. So I think Justin Roiland just wanted an easier time in the booth for this one.
When you're the boss, you can do that.
Yeah. Okay, so Terry.
Thomas Middleditch? Is that how you pronounce it?
Middleditch, yeah.
Thomas Middleditch as Terry. What do you got on him?
Yeah, you will know him. His biggest role is Silicon Valley on HBO. But he also does a lot of voice acting. Frequently he's a little bit in the background on a lot of them, but you will see him popping up in kind of interesting places. He is primarily a comedy actor, shows up as sort of a character actor in a lot of comedy movies. He was in the Zombieland sequel. He's in like he did a voice in the Captain Underpants movie. He shows up on, like, Key and Peele in the background, Pete Holmes show, some of these comedy shows, Comedy Bang Bang, Drunk History, all that kind of fun stuff. But he also shows up on things like Rick and Morty, of course he's done, and Bob's Burgers, things like that. So he's gaining a name for himself in voice acting. He's also a voice in a video game I have been playing constantly these last few weeks, Star Wars: The Old Republic. But he's just kind of background voices in there, not anybody I can really name. I just noticed him on the list when I was going through voice actors in that game. Anyway, moving on.
Sean Guillembrone, I think that's how you pronounce his name, as Yumulak.
Yeah, I've never actually heard him pronounce his last name, so I'm not. I think it's Jumbroni, actually. He says it at the end of a couple of the Goldbergs episodes. But he is the main character, the main little boy in the Goldbergs.
He was also Ron Stoppable in the Kim Possible live-action movie. Yeah, I remember. I did see that for the Kim Possible episode.
Yeah, I did not. But yeah, he's best known for being the lead on the Goldbergs. I say little boy. He's 20 now in real life, but he plays much younger on the show. I think
he looks
on the
much younger.
He does look much younger. I think on the show his character is supposed to be like a sophomore in high school at this point. And even though his voice did decidedly break during the production of the Goldbergs, because there is a big difference between the way he sounds in one season and the way he sounds in the next, he still does have the ability to have a very incredibly youthful young boy sound. So it's one of the few times that an adult man is actually playing a child boy on an animated series. It usually doesn't happen.
Unless you want to recast him every season.
But the interesting thing is that he has also started doing a lot of voice acting. Mm-hmm. He has started popping up on shows that I did not expect him on. Mainly, he showed up in the new Harley Quinn series that has been made for the internet, which I highly recommend and is also not for children.
Well, like you said before, especially with animation, a lot of these actors are recording their own voices at home rather than being in front of the camera.
Well, in the stuff that's being produced now, but most of the stuff we're seeing, I think, was recorded before.
In the before four.
In the before four, as they would say on Solar Opposites. Interestingly, he played the nephew of the Penguin in the Harley Quinn series. So if you watch the Harley Quinn series, the Penguin's nephew, who shows up in a few episodes in the first season, that is also Sean Giambroni. I think we're going with Giambroni.
Okay, Giambroni.
Interestingly, his mother on the Goldbergs, Wendy McClendon Covey, is a character in one of the episodes, kind of in the background. Not a main character, but she does show up.
Well, yeah. So we can talk about that. Mary Mack as Jessie, and all I think is Mary Mack.
Yeah,
Mack.
That was what I got. I don't know if that's her birth name or not. She does appear to be a stand-up comedian. Mm-hmm. I know nothing about her. I do not believe I've ever come across her before. So,
she does not even have a picture on her Wikipedia page.
Yeah, but it is apparently somebody that they kind of pulled from the stand-up comedy scene, which is interesting. That pulling somebody from stand-up into voice acting has given us quite a few interesting actors in animation, so I'm okay with it. And she does a good job on this series. You know, I wish I could tell you more about, you know, her style and stuff, but she hasn't done a lot of stuff. Apparently, she did do a quick appearance in an Aqua Teen Hunger Force episode, but I honestly do not remember the character. So, you know, it's one of those things. This seems to be her first big film/TV role.
Yeah. And finally, Sagan McMahon as the pupa. Now, I'm not sure if this is actually the voice for the character throughout the entire series or not. Because
there are two voices, and we won't spoil why. Let's just say that.
Yes. Sagan McMahon does not even have a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, however, McMahon is spelled the exact same way as Mike McMahon spells his name, so I'm thinking maybe some sort of relation there. I would not hazard a guess as to what that relation might be. But it does seem likely. Mm-hmm. IMDb lists this as their only credit. So, it does seem like kind of a one-off thing for this show.
Hey, can you do a cutesy little baby voice for the pet in the show? Okay.
Yeah, it seems to maybe be that. So, yeah, names you might know, I won't really get into them, but names you might know that show up throughout the series. Andrew Daly and Christina Hendricks show up as very important recurring characters. You get Tiffany Haddish at one point. Alfred Molina shows up as another incredibly important character. Carrie Walgren, Whitney McClendon-Covey, as I said before. So you get a lot of, depending on, how good you are at voices and stuff, there will be a lot of people from other things you recognize kind of coming in either as recurring characters or not. You also get some big name voice actors in there too, as Tom Kenny, voice of SpongeBob, shows up at one point. You get Gary Anthony Williams. You get a few other people pop in and out through there. So, Alan Tudyk as well shows up in an episode. But there's a lot of little, vocal, hey, that sounds familiar.
Oh, yeah, I recognize that voice.
Yeah, it's one of those things, but from some very strange places you wouldn't really imagine. In some cases, Tiffany Haddish is not really one I expected to hear kind of thing, nor was Alfred Molina. So, interesting cast, both as in the main cast and as recurring characters. Let's talk about the B plot that at one point becomes the A plot.
So throughout the series, the kids, Jesse and Yumulak, have a tendency to shrink Earthlings and kind of keep them as pets in a sort of anthill wall, a wall that's pretty much an anthill, a pet home for these shrunken humans.
They call it a dollhouse at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea behind this is that Yumulak has a very short temper and is very mean. He is a kind of little bully kid.
Yeah.
And he will find adults. He and Jesse have made a pact that he will only do this to adult humans who should know better. He finds adults that he has seen be mean in some way, according to his very strange sense of morality. And as punishment for whatever misdeed they did, he will shrink them, and they will deposit them in this giant, weird hamster terrarium thing hidden in the wall of their bedroom.
And what Yumulak considers rude could be just being a racist or to messing up his order at a restaurant.
Or, one person we know gets put in there for messing up his order at a restaurant. One person we know gets put in there for farting in an elevator and blaming it on Yumulak. Because he's the little kid, so what he's gonna do. Some people it does seem like are racists, or even worse. There's some suggestion that some of these people have done way worse things. Yeah. One of them was the janitor at their school, who makes fun of the kids at one point.
I got something to talk about the faculty at that school.
Oh yeah, we'll get to their school in a second, but let's stick with the wall right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are hundreds or potentially thousands
of people that they shrunk down and put into this petting zoo kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very much more like an anthill. I think you would. They kind of, sort of halfway observe them, but they don't seem that particularly interested in what is going on in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And the wall quickly, you suddenly start to see the wall from the
Other
viewpoint
side.
of the people who are trapped in it. And
Yeah.
start to see that the wall is a very stratified society with like gangs and warlords, and it kind of grows from there. The story of the wall becomes its own almost second series that exists within this other series.
Yeah, and like you said, it starts off very small. Those first 4 episodes, you kind of get glimpses into it, but once you get episode 5, half the episode is dedicated to what's going on in the wall.
And by the time you get to episode 7, spoiler alert, that one is all about the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's just an entire episode in there. Which may be the most fascinating episode of the series, honestly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the kids go to school because that is what human children do.
Yeah, not because they need to, because they are clearly as smart as their adult counterparts, for better or worse. But they do it just because that's what children do. Children go to school.
Yeah, at one point they even question why they're there, and the answer does seem to be because that's what you do on Earth. Mm-hmm. This school is a nightmare, and sort of reminds me of the school I attended.
Go ahead.
Every adult in there is absolute wackadoodle.
And seems to be getting out to get the students.
Yeah, like I said, this reminds me of my high school entirely.
And singles out Jesse and Yummy for being aliens.
Yeah, for being different. It goes back and forth, interestingly, the series, as it doesn't seem that Earth was all that really changed or even phased by the fact that an alien spaceship crashed into a house and the aliens are just like, okay, we live here now. There's
no the men in black did not come to dissect them.
Or even like the local police. It seems like nobody actually cared. They're just like, oh, I guess you own that house now, and your kids go to the local school, and your pupa wanders around the neighborhood getting into shenanigans. Yeah, okay, cool.
The neighborhood seems to be very accepting of the fact that aliens exist and aliens live in their neighborhood, but they don't like that aliens live in their neighborhood.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a of a racism parallel in the most mild way. It's more of mostly I wouldn't necessarily call any bullying harmless, but it's mostly kind of schoolyard bullying.
I mean, the first episode, the school bully gets on them just for the fact that they're aliens. They're saying ETs suck.
Yeah, but even the adults.
Yeah.
Even the adults. There's an episode where their homeowners association kind of puts some new rules in that are there to specifically target them. Any
additions to the house has to be painted like the house.
Yeah, they want them to paint their spaceship, and stuff like that. But
yeah, basically rules that specifically pertain to aliens.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's not like, there's a little bit of name calling and there's a little bit of like great alien jerks, but they're not like forming torch and pitchfork mobs to come get the aliens that just landed on their planet. They mostly seem to be able to go around town without being terribly harassed. Like, people don't see them walk in the door and go like, oh my god, aliens! They're just like, freaking aliens.
Well, we know in the first episode it stated that they've been on Earth for a year.
Yeah, but like, is a year really enough time for humans to get used to the fact that, like, there is other sentient life in the universe, and some of it just...
That's what we're led to believe in that, because no one seems to go, oh my god, aliens are here, oh my god, it's an alien. It's like, okay, you blue guy, why don't you stop doing this, or,
Yeah, it is a very sitcom-y premise. It's kind of like, what if Alf didn't have to hide?
Pretty much.
It's like, oh, Alf is here, and it's just the weird furry roommate that lives with the neighbors. It's like, there's no, although this is Justin Roiland for better or for worse, so this might also end up with the main characters being taken by the government and on the verge of execution before ending and never telling us the resolution of that story. Thanks for the childhood trauma, Alf.
There was
Anyway.
a TV movie that wrapped it up. They just couldn't get any of the original cast to come back for that.
So, I never saw the TV movie. Fun fact. To this day, have never seen the TV movie, but I remember that ending episode. Anyway, so yeah, it's kind of a weird dynamic which is also sort of present in Rick and Morty. Of the fact that, like, suddenly aliens and, as they keep saying in the show, random sci-fi nonsense, just is kind of on Earth now, and everybody just goes like, oh yeah, the aliens have a shrink ray, It's like, nobody's going like, wait, shrink rays are possible? Elon Musk has shown up with $70 billion to offer you for your shrink ray. Like, I don't know. It's very strange. And Rick and Morty runs in that same kind of vein of just, yeah, sci-fi stuff is all real now, and humans kind of look at it and shrug and go about their mundane lives.
Yeah, and none of them seem to put two and two together that all this sci-fi stuff is just happened to started when the aliens crashed on Earth.
Yeah. At least in Rick and Morty, it seems a little bit like the humans didn't quite know until aliens show up in force and take over the planet, and then afterwards it's just like, oh, sometimes aliens come to do tourist stuff on the planet. It seems slightly more realistic in a way that humans just go from like, oh, we're enslaved by alien overlords to, okay, we've made peace with the aliens, and now they just come and vacation on
You kind
Earth.
of wonder if Corvo and Terry, had to go through citizenship.
Yeah, I do wonder that as well. I don't know. It seems very
Like,
like
they cannot,
a very strange dynamic.
Immigration cannot send them back to a planet that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they would legitimately be refugees.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the kind of the first half of the series, because we talked about how the two halves are kind of different in tone a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the first half is very much sitcom shenanigans in a way. The first one is kind of about the kids being bullied at school because they're, one, the new kids, and two, aliens.
Yeah.
And a weird sci-fi run-in they have with one of their classmates.
They're bully.
And then the other storyline is Corvo and Terry become very into this show called Fun Bucket, which also, so it's a very much a very Alf-like show. It's like a kids show where there's an alien who teaches children about things. It seems to be an educational kids show. But
according to the clips that they show of the clips they show of Fun Bucket, there is a dark turn to this show because you clearly see Fun Bucket doing things that would not be shown in a kids show.
But Terry and Corvo, in a kind of Galaxy Quest sort of way, don't realize that
it's a TV
Fun
show.
Bucket is not real. They assume that all human TV shows are either reality shows or news programs. That I don't think they quite understand fiction at this point.
Well,
And
you probably saw a movie with aliens in it. Oh, aliens have been to this planet before.
yeah, and apparently the populace is just fine with them wandering around, so maybe that kind of helped. But you know, they realize that it's fictional at one point, and that devolves into some crazy shenanigans. And then at the end of the episode is when they kind of just let drop, like, oh yeah, the pupa is a giant terraforming monster that will eventually eat the entire planet. So, you know, I'm not really considering that a spoiler, even though it comes at the end of the first episode, because almost every review mentions that plot point.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if you consider that a giant horrific reveal, sorry, but it really isn't. It's not, you know, it's just part of the setup for the series. There's an episode where Corvo and Terry decide to use nanobots that can record memories to make everybody in their homeowners association and also the town like them.
Yeah, because it's discovered that no one in the town likes them. Not even because they're aliens. Some people don't like them because they're jerks.
Yeah, and Corvo is very definitely a jerk. I think Terry is kind of thing. Corvo, for those of you who have seen Rick and Morty, I'm going to make this comparison because it came to me. Corvo does seem to be if Rick were also a Jerry. He's smart and he's gruff, but he's also a complete incompetent loser. So it's a very interesting dynamic. It's kind of like those two characters mixed together.
It's like you said earlier, Corvo is book smart and Terry seems to be street smart.
Yeah, I do kind of question, though, on some level how book smart Corvo is. Because when they get into scrapes, frequently Corvo cannot get them out of them in the way that he probably should if he were a genius level like Rick is supposed to be over on the other show.
Well, maybe he's just, you know, fake it till you make it kind of smart.
Maybe. I don't know. He definitely seems more book smart than Terry, but I don't know how he actually compared to the smart people on his home planet, I guess.
That could be a future episode, honestly.
Yeah, maybe. But, you know, episode 2 is more like, how much do you really want to know about people? Is there a point where you know too much about a person? You know, what do people really want out of life? There's also a B plot, which I love, which is basically a parody of the movie Green Room, which is a movie about a band that gets trapped in a neo-Nazi bar. Except it happens to the children through various, you know, things. And I loved it because I immediately thought, like, are they doing a parody of Green Room? And then immediately Jesse says, this is just like the movie Green Room. And I went, okay, that is where we're going with it. So that's the B-plot of that episode. And it does tie into the wall plot a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I like it. I like how in the first 4 episodes the wall plot just sort of builds quietly in the background. Episode 3 is Corvo decides to become a magician to try to impress his family and make them like him. A lot of these episodes are about Corvo or Yumyalak wanting people to like them.
Yeah. Well,
that is a major theme in this series, is the unlikable characters desperately wanting people to like them.
And a lot of it is Corvo. He wants his, for lack of a better word, family to take their mission more seriously. That's a common theme in the entire series. He wants them to take the mission seriously, and they're treating it like almost like a vacation.
Yeah.
Except they have to go to school and stuff. But still, like they're especially with Terry, you know, being more interested in Earth pop culture versus the mission, which is,
leaving Earth.
Yeah, either leaving Earth or consuming it to become the new home world.
It does seem that Corvo wants to just leave Earth rather than terraform it.
Well, we find out early on, Corvo did not plan on landing on Earth. Especially he did not know that it was an inhabited world. So he wants to get off that world, likely because he does not want the pupa to destroy the world and all the life on it, because that would, he doesn't want to kill people.
Thanks, Corvo, you're such a softie.
Well, depending on the episode. But yeah, he wants off that planet, mostly because he hates that planet and he hates everything about it.
Yeah.
He hates their ways.
Fair.
Yeah, he hates everything. Considering the recent news articles in the world, I would want to get off this planet too.
Yeah. Every episode starts off with something like, I hate this planet, Earth is a horrible home, and I'm like, yeah, I feel you, Corvo.
Each episode the intro theme ends with one of a complaint by Corvo about how much he hates Earth.
Yeah, and they're different every time, so don't skip the opening, because the opening is actually different to every episode, which I really appreciate.
It's their Simpsons couch gag.
Yeah, it is very much in the vein of a Simpsons couch gag, so don't skip it. And I like that Hulu does not give you the option to skip it like it does on a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Usually streaming services will be like, oh, you've seen the opening, and we'll just auto skip it from that, but they don't on this one because it is different and funny in every episode. Yeah, so, Corvo becomes a magician to get people to like him, and it becomes kind of a weird now you see me / the Prestige kind of mash up in some very strange ways that don't go where you expect them to go.
And cameos of other famous magicians.
Yeah, including an interesting Penn and Teller style cameo. They're
never addressed. They're never called Penn and Teller.
Yeah,
but they look like Penn and Teller.
Background, but they look exactly like Penn and Teller drawn in a Justin Roiland style. So, it's very obviously them. Interestingly, though, Penn and Teller have done animation before. They were famously on The Simpsons. So they might have been able to get them.
Peg Gillette has done multiple voice acting for many shows.
Well, yeah, and recently Teller has started doing more of that too.
As long as you don't see his face, it's fine.
Actually, now he will. I know way too much about Penn and Teller, but especially Teller. But Teller will not speak while performing magic, but he will actually just speak as himself. He has now done like live action acting gigs. Not as Teller, but just, him playing a character, where he speaks. He's done, some voiceovers. He even did a really cool, YouTube series that's actually a zombie survival thing where he is the main character and does talk throughout it.
Maybe it's just that the character of Teller the Magician doesn't talk, so he won't talk.
Yeah. When he is on stage performing magic, he will not speak during that. But he has relaxed his rules about no one can ever see me speak in the last decade or so. So yeah, moving past the magic episode, the end of the first half is mostly the A plot is that the two kids try to become popular kids at school.
Again, following that thing of them wanting to be popular. They want people to like them.
Yeah.
Yumulek wants to sit with the cool boys at the cool boys table. Jesse wants to hang out with the cool girls,
who are all named Stacy.
Yeah, and they end up going to a party. And
yeah. It is a fascinating kind of episode that once again does not go where you expect it to go. And then there is a B plot where Corvo is very stressed out, and due to the alien biology that ends up resulting in a murderous little homunculus.
Basically, when these aliens get stressed out, they sweat out these little creatures.
Gooblers. They
What?
they gooble or something, I think is what they call it.
Yeah.
Gooblers or something.
Gooblers, which is their version of sweat every time they get anxious or nervous or stressed in any kind of way.
Except they are like tiny little sentient creatures.
Yes. And when one Schlorpian gets stressed to a certain degree, one does come out and becomes murderous.
Yeah. So Corvo is a giant ball of stress.
In the current world, everyone's a giant ball of stress.
Yeah. But this is said in the before.
Yeah.
But I will say, I will not spoil it, but at one point they have to confront the place Corvo is most stressed by, and that reveal is one of the funniest things in the entire series to me.
Yes, especially the reason why it makes him so stressed out.
Yeah, it's a great reveal of what sort of environment would make Corvo most stressed, and I guarantee you are not gonna guess it. It is gonna smack you full in the face, and you're gonna love it. So, moving on to the next episode, this is where it starts to kind of congeal a little bit more, and each episode very obviously is building on the last one.
Yeah.
And this one is kind of a half and half episode. We get half of it with the Schlorpians and half of it inside the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked this episode. This was kind of the point in the series that I was like, this has a lot of like really, really impressive potential.
I guess you have more of an A1 plot and an A2 plot, and then there's the B plot with the wall characters. Because a lot of it revolves around school. Like, and
the children, because Corvo and Terry decide to go to college for reasons.
Basically, they at some point, Terry gets jealous that the replicants have to go to school every day, and he wants to go to school, and Corvo tells him, well, there's school for adults. And Terry is kind of depressed that college life is not like what the movies make it out to be. Yeah, it's not Animal House.
Another one, or Van Wilder, I believe is.
Yeah, he says Van Wilder.
He is dressed as Van Wilder at one point, so it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It also has an interesting part of the plot where Terry decides to bring Corvo down to his level, and I'm not going to say. A stupid gun. Yeah. I was not going to say how he did that, but it is an interesting and funny dynamic. And the interesting thing is that the other one is that Yumulak and Jesse get threatened with expulsion because they're not taking the school rules seriously. They're doing kind of horrible things to their teachers when they get annoyed at them. Yumulak has never shown up for a day of school on time the entire time he's been there, it seems.
Yeah.
And they decide to become model students, which also does not go the way anyone would have hoped.
You have to actually pay attention to the opening scene at the school. This is one of those things that if you're not paying attention to the
background context clues, it does kind of confuse you later. So, this is a show that rewards paying attention. This is not a put it on in the background and listen to it while you make dinner.
Establishing shot. That's what I was trying to find. That's the words. If you pay attention to the establishing shot, it will give the entire plot away. If you're not, you'll be confused.
Yeah. And then the inside the wall plot, there is some unhappiness brewing among the people in the wall with the way that wall society is structured.
The hierarchy of the people inside the wall.
Yeah, the various factions and how they interact, and it's interesting. It's its own little plot. Honestly, you could halfway remove the wall plot, and it would just be its own standalone series, and it would be equally awesome.
I found, and this might upset some people who watch the show, but I found more entertainment, more engagement with the wall plot than it was more with the alien plot.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are almost two distinct shows here, and one show is very much like a wacky family sitcom for the most part, and the other one is like a
Lord of the Flies.
well, it's like a really, I won't call it like super deep, but it is trying to be like a more deep, slightly more dramatic
Lost?
social commentary show.
Yeah.
That is not, while it is funny, mostly because of kind of juxtaposition humor of, all these people talking about their life in the before and all the various ways this society has built up. And there's a little bit of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids where it's funny, seeing giant objects compared to tiny little humans. It's, so, but it's an incredibly different tone. So I like it. I approve of both of these things, but it is very fascinating to see two such completely disparate styles shoved together.
Yeah, and the big twist at the end of the whole school plot.
Yeah, I love it. I won't spoil it, but it's great. I did like the I will warn you though, it is a very adult situation that comes up in this whole episode.
Yeah, this is an adult show, TVMA, not for children.
Yeah. There is sex and violence and gore and naughty words and all of that stuff. The gore is animated gore, yeah. So it depends on your personal ability to deal with that. But
in our real life, myself and Kiki have a tendency to swear a lot, and we're kind of holding everything back, trying not to get into the show like that.
Yeah, we very, very much, anybody who knows us personally knows that we are very much toning it down for this show in order to keep it relatively family friendly. The show we are talking about today, Solar Opposites, does not do that. Be warned. So yeah, okay, let's move on to episode 6 of 8. This is their gender politics episode. This is their aliens trying to understand human gender.
Yeah, and in one class, the replicants learn about gender classism. Jesse's given an assignment. There's an assignment just for the girls in the class to kind of break the glass ceiling of the patriarchy, as it were.
In some way.
Yeah. It's never just said how, but it's just said
go find a glass ceiling and shatter it. And the boys in the class have to draw a lightsaber because everything is easier for boys.
And she straight up says it, like, you're a
guy. Yeah, it said you might as well learn now that men just have everything easier. Sorry, girls.
It's not exactly a fair lesson, but it's not exactly a lie.
In the adult plot, Corvo and Terry discover the mank cave.
Yes, the concept of the man cave, or they call it the mank cave.
And they build one, and then they discover that it's not very fun because they do not have a harpy wife who's angry at them for being in the man cave all the time. So they decide to build a robot one, and shenanigans ensue.
Honestly, this robot wife is really one of my favorite characters in this series. And it's really weird because she is pretty much, her entire personality is based off the stereotypical harpy housewife from sitcoms.
Yeah, this is an entire sitcom trope very specifically brought to life by two aliens who watch too much TV.
And I think that's why, because it's what aliens would think a housewife is.
Yeah, I mean, if your only connection to human culture was watching American sitcoms, this is absolutely what you would believe a marriage and a housewife is.
Yeah, especially, I mean, name a sitcom that had a married couple in it, and it's every one of those wives in one.
Yeah, I think they mentioned Everybody Loves Raymond. I think they name drop Simpsons at one point. They mentioned a couple of other kind of famous sitcoms.
TV moms, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to make a confession.
Mm-hmm.
This is my least favorite episode of the season. By miles.
Well, yeah, it's every stereotype that you would hate.
But also, I really expected this episode to be like a satire. There's a lot there in...
I agree. I think it would have been a better episode if it was more satired.
Yeah, aliens without the human concept of gender try to understand the very bizarre societal concept of gender is a really good premise.
And when they say I like the robot wife, it's mostly because of the third act twist that happens with the robot wife.
Yeah. I get that, and I like that too. However, I am not sure this episode had a point it was trying to make.
Consider, going by Wikipedia, this was written by a woman on the writing staff, but it definitely feels like it was written, somebody hurt somebody, and that was just what the purpose of this episode. That's at least what it felt like in some cases.
I was shocked to find out a woman wrote this episode. I watched this and I was like, this was written by a man who's never talked to a woman. It felt so... I don't know if that, was that the point?
Especially
to do that, yeah. The other side of the flip side of I don't know.
Especially the resolution with the wife bot and what happens at the end of the episode.
Yeah, and the stuff with the class and the
I don't want to spoil it because the joke is both terrible and I feel guilty because I laughed at it. Of what happens to the robot wife at the end of the episode.
I found it a little more interesting. There is a scene near the end. Again, I won't spoil any of the content, but there is a scene near the end where Jessie talks to her gender studies teacher, and the conversation does not go the way either of them expected.
Yeah.
And I felt that one scene was super fascinating, and I wish that had been the episode. I think that could have been a better episode. Scene had been the entire point of the episode and the entire focus of the episode. That would have been a brilliant, amazing episode with some kind of funny satire of human society.
Yeah.
But as it is... nothing about this felt fresh or interesting or...
It needed to be more of a parody than it was.
Yeah, this had so many opportunities for satire, and I didn't feel it. I mean, maybe there was something in there I missed. I'm willing to be educated. I may have to go back and watch it again because... yeah. I don't know. I really wanted to like this episode. When I first read through the kind of reviews and episode, slugline descriptions, I was like, oh, that's the episode I'm going to like. That's going to be a good one. Because the interesting thing is that...
It feels like the episode that happened in the background of this that we never see would have been a better episode.
Yeah, in a way.
Yumulek has his own adventure apart from everyone else that we never see.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is I'm not saying that a Justin Roiland show can't do this, because there's some really interesting gender politics stuff in Rick and Morty. Mm-hmm. I know people don't believe it, but there really is, and some of it is very insightful and precise, even though it is mostly written by men. So it's not that I don't think that a show led by, Justin Roiland, Mike McMahon could not do this. I don't know if this, something happened in editing or what, but I got to the end and I was like, what was the point in that?
Written by a woman, directed by a woman. I don't know. Maybe something got lost in translation.
This, to me, reminded me of what happened with The Simpsons recently, when they tried to address the Apu thing in the show. And at the end, Marge is like, what are you going to do? It is what it is. We're not going to do anything about it. And that went over so much like a lead balloon that they eventually had to reverse course and change all of their plans. Because they thought it was going to be like a shrug and a wink, like, yeah, we hear you, but we've been doing this for 30 years, so who cares? It
sounds very similar to South Park when they did the whole reveal of Cartman's father, and it's like, no one's gonna care about this. This is a dumb cartoon. No one's gonna care about this, and the amount of hate that they got over the reveal.
I'm gonna be honest. I stopped paying attention to South Park so long ago that I never even knew they did that.
That was in the second season.
Oh, was it? Oh, you mean that? Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. I thought they came back to it and was like,
they did.
That was silly. So let's do something more, and then that went over like I don't know. They've done that a few times in South Park where they're like, they give an explanation for something. It doesn't go the way they think. So they retcon it like 4 seasons later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I won't say that this feels as tone deaf as The Simpsons, but it's the closest thing I could think of in recent history.
Yeah, I guess.
That it does kind of seem like there is a running gag, and I honestly don't feel like this is a spoiler because it's just kind of like a running gag. But Yumulek goes at the beginning of the episode like, "Oh, you're doing a gender thing? Yeah, I'm not going to be a part of this. This cannot end well." And then just disappears for like the whole episode. He's just not.
Again, he ends up having his own adventure that we never see.
Yeah.
That honestly could have been a really cool episode if we didn't see it.
And then, it's like, it seems like the entire episode is just like, nobody wins when you talk about gender. And I'm like, is that really where we want to go with that? Like, is that really your perspective? Because, no. I don't know. It really fell flat for me, and it was the one I was looking forward to the most, and it was the one I ended up hating the least.
Do you want to move on?
On the flip side of that,
go ahead.
To segue into the next episode, this was the episode I expected to hate the most because of something I heard about it, and it was the episode I ended up loving the most, despite that unfortunate one plot point.
Same. I actually, like I said before, I actually found the wall characters a bit more appealing, their story was a bit more interesting to me than some of the antics that the aliens were doing. So this whole episode was kind of my bag. The entire episode was a little bit of a spoiler. This whole episode takes place with the characters in the wall.
And another minor spoiler, even though this is the best episode of the season, steel yourself, because if the phrase Fry's dog from Futurama means anything to you, prepare yourself. I'm sorry, but I would have been very upset had I not heard that bit of spoiler before watching this episode. I was kind of able to just, I knew I was going to have to watch it. There was no way I could skip it and still do this episode. So I kind of just sucked it up and powered through it, knowing that that was a plot point. And it's not as bad as Futurama. I'm going to say it's not as horrifically offensive. And unlike Futurama, there is a very important plot reason why what happens.
Yeah.
But if you are sensitive at all to that reference, just know that this episode is very worth it, but there's going to be about 2 minutes you are going to hate everything.
Yeah,
and all I can say about that without getting into more specifics.
And there were some friends of ours who heard about that and were kind of upset. Oh, I'm not going to watch the episode because I love dogs. Has nothing to do with a dog. We could say Fry's dog because that is the closest analogy that we can do.
Yeah, yes. That's the best I can give you for. Honestly, it's a trigger warning. It really is.
Definitely is.
So if that is going to be a trigger for you, I would honestly still encourage you to watch this episode. It's not, it's not the major part of the episode as it is in Futurama. It is in the background, but it is there. However, this is by far, I think, the most interesting, coherent, best, fully realized episode of the season.
And this is, again, you have to have watched. You can't just jump into this episode. Because so much of it is set up as either background or B plots of other episodes.
This is the first episode that you could not watch on its own.
Yeah.
It is the first episode that is completely dependent on things that have happened before in the series. The rest of the series, up to this point at least, I'm not sure you would really want to do this with episode 8. But up until this point, especially in the first half of the series, you could kind of just go, there are aliens on Earth, go with it, and just show them an episode without any more context. And it would be enjoyable. This one really needs the context of the previous 6 episodes to understand anything about it.
And if they come back to this in season 2, there's potential with these wall characters.
Yeah, and I really hope they do. I really want to know what happens after this episode, because it is a game changer and wonderful, and I hesitate to really say anything about any part of this plot because every little bit of it is so brilliant. This is really an interesting tour de force for Andrew Daly, who is a comedic actor who is suddenly doing quite a dramatic role.
Yeah, he plays. He plays the main, the character of Tim.
The main character in this episode. That it revolves around this one character, and you see him in previous episodes, and then he becomes kind of the lead in this episode. I was kind of shocked to get this level of really impressive acting from Andrew Daly. I like Andrew Daly, don't get me wrong. But if you would have been like, here's the concept of a character and Andrew Daly is going to play it, I would have been like, that's a great joke. Now tell me the real concept. But he nails it. Every bit of this is just note perfect, and I love it.
It's like, when people tells you, oh, here's Jim Carrey playing a serious character. Oh yeah, that's funny. Well, who's really starring in this movie? Jim Carrey. And he's really good.
Yeah, and it's really good. Andrew Daly might actually have like a really good career as a dramatic actor if he wants one. This is a really impressive, and with voice acting, it's kind of easy to. I'm not saying easy, but it's easier in comparison to put on a goofy voice and say a joke, and it works. It is really difficult to do drama voice acting. And And bravo to the entire cast that this comes off as a really interesting. I won't say there's no comedy in it. It is still a comedy show. But the main plot does get a bit drama, in the sense of a bit more serious in tone, not necessarily like,
This is the most serious episode of a comedy series.
Necessarily. But yeah, this is a more serious episode of a comedy series, and it works so well. I'm not sure I would have expected this to work in the elevator pitch.
No.
If you'd have been like, well, we're going to start the series with a goofy family of aliens, and they're going to have crazy sci-fi adventures, and then right in the middle of it, this episode. I would not have.
This episode itself, I mean, this is my episode 7. This is why it was my favorite, is that it feels like we could have had an entire series about the wall, and then, like, every, once an episode, we could venture into the world where these aliens are just kidnapping random people and putting them in this prison, this box, this whatever.
This could have been an entirely different, like, the premise of this would have been like an amazing, like, horror series. This is like Cube or something. It is really
almost like Twilight Zone. I mean, imagine, aliens have landed on Earth, and, to make it different, they look like humans, but everyone who discovers that they're aliens gets shrunk down and put in this little prison.
Yeah, I mean, you could do this concept in so many different, like, really dramatic and dark ways, and to find this concept just in the middle of a goofy family sitcom.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. And I can't imagine who else would come up with this necessarily, but I absolutely love everything about it. It is my favorite part of the show. It makes the show what it is to me. This episode, despite the kind of unfortunate Fry's dog reference, this episode is by far the single best, and it only pays off if you've watched the 6 episodes in front of it. If you are going to watch this series for nothing else, just be like, okay, the first couple of hours are what I need to get off to this, like, amazing 30-minute climax payoff.
Yeah.
So ending the season with a kind of denouement here, we go back to the aliens for this episode, and mostly Corvo and Terry. We get a little B plot with the kids, but this is mostly the adults show.
And this is where we learn a lot more about their homeworld.
Yeah, they use a time-traveling sneakers to go back and observe their home planet a couple of years back. It seems
the vague I can give you is there's knowledge that they need to know that was lost when their world was destroyed. So they go back in time to get that knowledge.
Yeah, they go back to retrieve a bit of knowledge that it seems that they should have brought with them, but there was an oopsie. And you get to see, it appears to be the point in time where they know the asteroid is coming and the planet is going to be lost, and the government or whatever has started
preparations for evacuation.
Yeah, they've started the mission that eventually Corvo and Terry will be on that ends them up on Earth. So it is that point in time between the knowledge of the destruction and the actual destruction. But you see how Corvo and Terry first met, what their lives were like before, to some extent, not a great extent, but little snippets of their lives before, little snippets of what the planet was like before. Mm-hmm. The most interesting thing in this is that there is a way that the planet is described by Corvo at the beginning of every episode. I'm not going to talk about it, but there's just, he gives a description of the planet prior to its destruction. And maybe Corvo is not a reliable narrator, is the best way I can kind of put that without getting into
romanticizing the past in a way.
Yeah, there's maybe a little bit of nostalgia goggles that Corvo has for the old ways. And, it gets a little bit Back to the Future-y.
Yeah.
At one point, because you're dealing with time travel, all that kind of stuff. The B plot is Yumulak decides that he wants his sister to like him more. Like I said, most of this series is just about one of the characters wanting people to like them.
Well, it's Yumulak trying to be a better person in a way. He realizes that he's kind of an a-hole to his sister, and he doesn't want to be an a-hole to his sister anymore. He's trying to be better.
I didn't read it that way so much as at one point he does say, "I want unconditional like from you."
But yeah, he doesn't want to work for it though.
Work for it.
That's the thing. He wants to be liked. He wants to be a better person, but he doesn't want to work for it. He wants a get-rich-quick scheme in terms of adoredness.
Yeah, and he kind of finds out that there's no get-rich-quick scheme that works for making people like you. Mm-hmm. That you have to put in a little bit of work. And that goes some very interesting places, and I do kind of like where it goes. And there are twists and turns for both plots, and they eventually become the same plot, And there's also a C plot that has to do with the pupa, and I'm not going to say anything more because it's its own thing, and you really need to experience it as it wouldn't make sense even if I tried to explain it, but it makes sense in context.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you paid attention to the pupa in the background of the various episodes, this is what it leads up to.
Yeah, and the pupa is very much a background character for most of the series. It does not, you see it have shenanigans, but, it's like how a lot of times you'll see, Maggie Simpson in the background playing and there's, a sight gag. But very few episodes focus in on Maggie as, a fully realized character. Yeah. Some do. But, for the first part of the series, at least, she was mostly, a background sight gag. And the pupa starts out in very similar way. It's a background sight gag that then becomes more in some very interesting ways. Mm-hmm. Also, watch the credits for the last episode at the end because they're fun.
This is definitely you. If nothing else, you do need to watch the credits of episode 8.
Yeah, the other ones are just credits, and while I do like watching credits because they have the names of all the awesome people who make the show, like our dear friend Lindsay, there is actually something that kind of happens during the credits of episode 8.
Every episode has their, I don't know who did it first, but a credits gag. And a lot of sitcoms do have those credit gags.
Yeah, but not at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the end,
a title card. Maybe you get a title card with a joke on it, like the stupid monkey from Robot Chicken kind of gag. Yeah. But the entire credits of episode 8, it's its own gag.
Yeah, the best I can describe it is if you've ever seen Bob's Burgers, in that kind of way, that there's kind of a continuation.
Yeah.
So, I gotta say, what was. This can't have been a rewatch for either of us. This is the first brand new property we've ever discussed on this show.
First property that we've reviewed in the year that it was released.
Yeah. In the month that it was released even.
Yeah.
So,
if the world hadn't ended, it would have probably been the Mulan remake. Let's be honest about that.
We had kind of planned to have the Mulan remake be the first thing we talked about in the month that it was released, but that hasn't happened. So this became it by awesome happenstance of Lindsay requesting it. But
there's one thing I want to talk about before we do kind of do our overall.
Oh, yeah.
And we did. Let's talk about the faculty at the school, specifically the principal and the teacher.
Yeah, we do need to get more into the faculty of the school. The faculty at the school is very interesting. We've already kind of mentioned the janitor.
Yeah.
Who is not a big part of the show, is very quick, kind of one-off character, really. Kind of a jerk, kind of a bully, gets sent to the wall. But the recurring characters from this school are the principal and one of the teachers. Do we know what she teaches? Because I kind of missed that if we did.
I've only ever seen her in the principal's office. So
yeah, she's always there in the principal's office, but it does seem that she has, at the very least, Jessie as a student. But
so she's not. They never address her as the vice principal, but she is clearly a teacher at the school.
Yeah. And they are somewhat of a couple.
Romantic. I wouldn't say romantically involved, but they hook up.
Yeah, they are definitely sexually involved at the very least, and very explicitly sexually involved.
This is an adult show for adults, not for children.
Yeah, this is. I was kind of surprised with some of the things that went on with these characters.
Our good friends Kyle Carosa and our good friend Luke Ski have their podcast. And they had Lindsay on there to talk about it. And there's one of the sexual acts that Lindsay had to draw.
Yeah. I mean, well done. But was kind of shocking. And I am not by any means a prude. This did not offend my sensibilities in any way, shape, or form. But it was surprising to see, even with that TVMA on that, you're used to that being on like South Park or most of the Adult Swim shows, some things like that, but
no naughty bits are seen.
Yeah, we will say that. Like, you do not see any form of genitalia.
You see a butt, that's about it.
But the way it is discussed and the evocativeness of the drawings, I suppose, are very. Yeah. You don't want your kids walking in at that point and starting to ask questions.
The relationship between the teacher and the principal seems to be they are sexually attracted to punishing children.
Yeah, it is a very strange, like, you get some weird kind of fetish stuff from them and all, but this is okay. You know when you're a kid and you're like, I bet that the principal and the teachers are just like really mean, horrible people, and they really they super enjoy being mean to us and giving us detention and stuff. What if that were true?
Yeah, and they got off on it.
Yeah, what if every horrible thing you ever thought about your teachers when you were in school were true?
Yeah.
And it's an interesting dynamic, I'm gonna say, but a very strange addition to the show. This seems to have been put in to be a setup for a plot point in a single episode.
Yeah.
But it is stretched over many episodes of setup to get to that point.
Yeah, it's, the setup and the payoff. It's a very long setup for a very short payoff.
Yeah. And I'm not necessarily saying it was a bad payoff. It actually, when the payoff comes, I was like, oh, so that wasn't entirely gratuitous. That was actually going to something.
Yeah.
Which I guess made me feel, I won't say better about it, but I was like, oh, this was not just put in here for necessarily shock value, even though it is to some extent shocking. But they were building to something, and I do respect that. I'm not one saying that you can't portray things like that in this medium, in the medium of animation. I'm not one of those who is like, animation is only for children. Like, this is definitely not, where I'm at with that. But this went a few places I'm not entirely certain that I've necessarily seen before, although some things in Rick and Morty do come very close. This was probably slightly more shocking to you, Tuesday, because you do not watch Rick and Morty.
No. But
this
again,
was like
right.
if Rick and Morty took it one step further, maybe, for me. Rick and Morty recently had an episode that was about Morty gets a dragon, and then you find out that the dragon is a sexual fetishist in a bunch of ways that are rather disturbing, and maybe having a dragon as a pet is not the cool thing you think it's going to be, and is in fact perhaps a terrifying, mentally scarring trauma that you do not want to repeat. So, I'm not saying that Rick and Morty hasn't gone there. The most recent episode of Rick and Morty, as we're recording this, is, I believe, Rick has sex with a planet. So, it's not like this is entirely untrod territory for this team.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Be warned that it is in there. You've got to make up your own decision. We're just trying to give you the information. It didn't particularly bother me that much after the, they're going to go there. Then I was kind of okay with it. But you got to make up your own mind on that. So just be warned it's in there.
Yeah. And, yeah. Like I said, the payoff to the sex gags leading up, where it leads up to was enjoyable, but again, could have been a bigger payoff, but for what it was fine.
Yeah.
So now I think that's all we can talk about any characters and anything without going super spoiler heavy. And we grazed the spoiler line here.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm of the personal opinion that people are too, they're a little too sensitive and unsure of what counts as a spoiler or not. Being told the plot setup to something is not, to me, a spoiler. Being told the twist at the end of the episode, to me, is a spoiler. Yeah. And I do not believe we have done that at any point along the way.
All right. So we want you to watch this show.
Yeah, we want you to enjoy this show and go into it not necessarily completely fresh, because I'm not sure that I definitely didn't do that, and I still got enjoyment out of it. But we want you to know what you're getting into so that you won't, gather the kids around to watch it.
This is not a kid's show.
Yeah.
But then again, you and I were kids when The Simpsons came out, and teenagers when South Park came out. And we turned out fine.
Neither of them go an eighth of the way as far as this show goes. So
yeah. Being sarcastic, guys. Sarcastic.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's get to the big question. This could not be a rewatch, but is there magic here?
I'm going to say yes, with a but. I found enjoyment with this show. As I said before, I found more enjoyment and entertainment from the characters in the wall than the actual alien characters. And I realized these were supposed to be the main characters. To be Lindsay, I'm sorry, but if my friend was not working on this show, I probably would not watch it.
I am going to say that I probably would watch this show regardless of any personal connection. There is a lot about this show that is my personal style. There are a lot of things that I really enjoy that we didn't get into that are kind of recurring gags, like Terry is wearing a different t-shirt in every episode and every one of them is hilarious.
They're very nerd-centric.
They are very nerdy and I love trying to figure out what t-shirt Terry is wearing in every episode, and half of them I'm like, man, I gotta go to Redbubble and see if anybody's made that. So I liked that. I like a lot of the backgrounds. There does appear to be some sort of, I won't call it a complete conlang, but there appears to be some sort of conscript, constructed alien writing. I binged this like this morning before we did the episode, so I haven't had time, but I guarantee you I will be going back and doing my best to translate that, because that is my favorite thing ever. So I'm hoping that there are some funny gags in alien writing throughout the show, because that's always been my favorite thing. I've done that with Futurama and a few other series that have those fun little alien writing with jokes in the background. I like that kind of stuff. I like the bizarrely wide range of pop culture references.
Yeah.
Weird parodies of things that they do. Like, I really didn't expect Green Room to be parodied in an animated show, but it was wonderful. So I think that I did not enjoy, if I'm going to be honestly critical, I don't think I enjoyed the first half of the series quite as much when I was watching it as I did the second half of the season.
Agreed.
I think when I go back, I will probably enjoy it on a rewatch more than I did on the first watch, because I know it's building to something. I know that the seemingly disconnected sitcom gags are not as disconnected as they seem, and I've probably missed a few things.
Probably. And go ahead.
But I think that this has a real potential that in its sophomore season to come, that it could really become its own very interesting thing.
I think so too. I think that this could have its own fan base, and after episode 8, where they leave it off, I'm very interested in where season 2 goes.
Yeah.
I was very interested with the wall characters, but after that final episode, I want to see where this goes. What does that, for lack of a better term, cliffhanger have to do?
Yeah, it's not really a cliffhanger. It's more sequel bait. Let's call it that.
Yeah, sequel bait. I guess we can call it that, sequel bait.
Yeah, it does wrap up. It does kind of have its own ending, but there's still a question hanging over it. Yeah.
It answers enough questions, but leaves enough questions open. You want those questions answered.
Yeah, and my immediate desire in my brain to go like, ooh, I wonder where they're going to go with that, I think gives me a lot of hope that in a second season it will congeal a little bit more.
As a lot of people say, a show really gets its footing in season 2. Because season 1, they're trying to figure out what these characters are, who these characters are, what their formula is, and by the time they get to season 2, everything's well-oiled. They know what they're doing. They're going to hit the floor running. And maybe that'll be true for season 2. We don't know.
There's also a lot of vagueness and open-ended things about the series that I think as you learn more, it might draw you in more. If we know more about Planet Schlorp, if we know more about like why were Corvo and Terry chosen to be, not even put together, but why were they chosen to be one of only 100 adults who survived the apocalypse? Is there something special about that? Was it a lottery? Like, we don't really know. And it would be interesting to find out for me. What exactly is their precise relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Would be interesting for me to find out. What caused them to choose their genders in the way they did?
Yeah.
Seems a very interesting question to me. If they revisit the gender issue again, though, I really hope they have more of a point or more of a satire to go with.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do not think they handled that well. That was by far the low point of the season. I I did not enjoy that at all.
I can go more into the gender episode, but that's spoilers, and I really don't want to spoil that episode.
Yeah, I mean, and we could suss it out. Maybe we'll revisit that on a week we're really bored and people have had a few months to watch it if they're gonna. I don't know, but there is a lot here that I really want explored and that I would be really interested in seeing again.
Again, there's questions about the pupa that we don't know about. Again, more about Planet Schlorp. What's going to happen with the characters in the wall? What happens in the next year of the school? So many questions that are in my head that I hope are answered in season 2, or at least ideas in season 1 that are expanded upon.
I am going to say that you brought up the fact that we do have, a tangential personal connection to the creation of this, or the production of this show.
Yeah.
I am going to tell you that I heard that Justin Roiland was developing a show. Mm-hmm. I heard that my friend got a job on a show. My friend told me a title, but nothing more. Mm-hmm. Because I'm sure there were probably, NDAs and all that. Okay, fine. But there was a title. I never heard the title of the show Justin Roiland was creating. But I was already stoked for a new Justin Roiland show. And I knew that if my friend worked on a show, I was at least going to give it a chance. And then when the first trailer came out and Lindsay posted it for, her friends, it said, here's the first trailer of the show I worked on. And I realized it was the same show. I lost my mind. I was so mad that she didn't tell me that she was working on this other show that I had been waiting to hear more about.
Again, NDA, she probably couldn't legally say all that stuff.
Well, I mean, if you can say a title, there's usually a which was created by name. That's not usually listed in an NDA, I don't think. But I don't know for sure. But, for me, I was like, oh my goodness, this is the best of both worlds coming together. Because now it's like, it's a show I was already jazzed about giving a try. And now I have the extra added of being able to say, like, hey, I know somebody who worked on that show. So
when conventions are a thing again, and you happen to be at one that Justin Roiland be at, you can say, hey, I know so-and-so that was, and he might not know that person, but that, my friend works it.
Yeah, that would, that's kind of how that works. Yeah. That's how I know half the people I know. But yeah, I was really pleased. I do think that this, I do think it takes a bit to find its footing. So if you watch it, I'm begging you, it's not a great strain on your time, and we've all got more free time than we know what to do with lately for most of us. Please give this enough of a shot to just make it through the season. It's like 3 hours of your life, and it's an interesting ride. Please do not just watch the first episode and make up your mind on that. Give it a few, because it's really worth it. I'm really glad that I had the excuse of this podcast to get me through the entire season. Because, the first couple of episodes are kind of disconnected seeming and not the best the show can offer. I'm just going to be honest about that.
Yeah, but when we get
Please
to that
stick with it, because it pays off so well, in my opinion. And I think your idea will change after that.
Yeah, so, we know that there is at least, we know at least one more season of this show is coming, because according to everything I read, they were signed for a 2-season run. So we know there's at least 8 more episodes of this series is happening.
Yeah. So there will at least be some sort of resolution to where it ends off. If you're like, oh, I don't want to watch something and I'm not sure if it's coming back, it is coming back. They're already working on it. I know. So, please give it a chance. It does seem to have hit a chord with a bunch of people.
Again, it's Hulu's one of Hulu's most popular something like they did some kind of jargon of like the highest rated premiere show or something like that. Of all its debut shows, this one had the most viewers in the shortest amount of time or something like that.
Yeah. And I'm glad it did. I'm glad it got in front of a bunch of eyeballs. I hope those eyeballs stay with it in season 2, and I hope that the writing staff is working very hard to up their game for season 2, because some of their ideas are fascinating to me, and I desperately want more of them. I really want to go back to the wall. Oh man,
there's definitely a lot of potential with this team. Definitely a lot of potential.
Yeah, and it's also funny and entertaining. Even the episodes that are not so good are still entertaining.
Yeah.
Even the episode I said I liked the least, there is still stuff that I really loved in that. I just can't really talk about it without spoilers. So you kind of get the general impression, which is this is my least favorite episode of the season. But that doesn't mean that there's not redeeming value.
Maybe we can come back to this when season 2 is announced, and we can actually do a full spoilerific version of this review.
Yeah, just kind of skip the basics and go back to here's the stuff we couldn't talk about before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of all we can say about that. So do we want to talk about what we're doing next week?
Next week we are going to be doing Meet the Robinsons.
Ooh.
And yeah, we're actually going into the future with this one. Have you ever seen Meet the Robinsons?
I have, yeah. So this will be a legit rewatch for me, unlike some of them. But I have a feeling that we're not fully equipped to deal with this one on our own. We may have to call in some backup.
Yeah, we might have a special guest on next week, people. Next week's episode is going to be really, really fun.
Yeah.
So, with that out of the way, check out Solar Opposites on Hulu. It really is really good, guys. It really is. Go to LoganAwards.com and submit your favorite funny songs from 2019, and maybe they'll get recognized. Check us out on iTunes. Give us a review. It would really help us out. And if you're into that, check us out on Spotify. We're there as well.
Yeah, and if you want to talk to us, give us any feedback, or make a request for a future episode, we're on both Facebook and Twitter, and we'd always love to hear from you.
Yep, and that's all. We'll see you guys next week for Meet the Robinsons. Bye!
Bye! Don't drop the pupa!
Thank you for listening to Rewatching the Magic. We invite you to keep the magic going by joining the conversation online. Find us on Facebook at Rewatching the Magic, on Twitter at Rewatch the Magic, and of course, find all new episodes at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com. Until next time, remember, the magic is for everyone. It only stops if you let it.